these are players you should stash on your fantasy football teams going into the rest of the season. They could potentially have playoff implications. And so if they're on your waiver wire or if they're anywhere on anybody's roster, maybe you should get them and stash them on your team. So let's talk about Adonai Mitchell first. And we obviously would know about this one because we're Colts fans. We told you coming into the season to temper your expectations for Adonai. And he has had some games where he's had some target volume this year. But coming into today's game, his high on the season for fantasy points in full point PPR leagues was 9 points against Jacksonville, where he only played 25% of the snaps. He had 7 targets in that game and 4 receptions. Now, the big difference in today's game, so there's two things really that have changed for Adonai Mitchell that you are obviously well aware of, but I'm going to reemphasize it because this is what makes him a really good target for the rest of the season in terms of stashing on your roster. Number one, you now have Joe Flacco for the I don't know. I honestly, as a Colts fan, I can't tell you. I don't know what they're doing, but it's Joe Flacco right now. So that's fine. For fantasy purposes, Joe Flacco makes sense for these receivers. He also makes sense for Adonai Mitchell.
Did today,
who stepped in today, had 6 targets, caught all 6 of them, had 71 yards, didn't have a touchdown, and still scored 13 points in full point PPR leagues. And one of the main reasons for this was because there was a lot of opportunity opened up by the absence of Michael Pittman. Obviously, you know Michael Pittman has been one of the bigger busts in fantasy football this season, ripped to us. Actually, I didn't really draft a lot of Michael Pittman. I think I drafted one of my trade.
I didn't either.
So pawn my failures off to you. It kind of works out.
Right. You keep on flexing while you get beat by Joe the Dev.
I still have a better record than you. I'm just saying. But
I would have had a bad record regardless.
But the thing with Pittman is, okay, the Colts as a team, as an organization is so dysfunctional right now. I would not be surprised if Pittman didn't play a whole lot the rest of the season.
Yeah, number 2, his back is shot.
And that's why. I think at this point, they're starting to realize that they're not playoff or Super Bowl contenders.
There's no reason to let him play while he was playing through an injury that he was considered to potentially be an IR candidate.
Correct.
And then decided to play through it, and he hasn't been the same even since playing through it.
Right. So, again, with Adonai Mitchell, I think there could be potential for an increased role the rest of the season. And if you do have him playing alongside Josh Downs and Alec Pierce, he does complement Josh Downs pretty well. They're pretty different players. And I think they are starting to figure out how to use Adonai Mitchell in this offense. Not to mention, I think Adonai Mitchell, as a rookie, needed some time to get his feet wet in the NFL. And now that you've seen him get some experience, I don't think it's going to be any secret here that he's going to see more snaps in this Colts offense. So.
Yeah, and I think one important thing to note here that was worthy of noting earlier in the season for a different reason, and that was Adonai Mitchell and where he was getting his target volume and opportunity.
Correct.
I think a lot of people were really excited in the first couple of weeks and were holding him for multiple weeks in hopes that he'd have touchdown and big play upside, and we were like, honestly, it's probably not going to come. AR is too inaccurate. You've got him, obviously getting those shots downfield, but outside of that, not a lot of consistent target volume. Now you saw today in this game against Buffalo, he was actually getting targets all over the field and even across the middle of the field in the short to intermediate game, which is a lot more sustainable production and opportunity than where he was previously being utilized.
Even it's baked into his statistics today, 6 catches for 71 yards. That's almost 12 yards per catch. I mean, at the most he's getting. I'm curious, and I'm going to check right now what his ADOT was coming into today's game, because when he was being used, you're right, he was being used as a field stretcher, which I think he could be very valuable in that role, in the Jameson Williams role for the Colts offense. But
that's more Alec Pierce, honestly.
For the fantasy, and Alec Pierce is going to be the big contested catch guy. But in terms of for fantasy purposes, this is average target distance, 4th in the NFL for Adonai Mitchell coming into today's game, 15.9 yards.
Yeah, that just straight up went so far down this game.
It did. And so this is what we're going to hold on to. This is why we're going to stash Mitchell. You may have to pick him up off of waivers this week. I think he's only rostered in sleeper leagues. He's only rostered in 17% of leagues, so you can get him. I would spend 5 to 10% on Adonai Mitchell. At this point, there's not going to be any good waiver pickups the rest of the season. He is somebody that could have a role, and you saw that today. So if they continue to use him at all, if he continues to get volume, and if they continue to get him targets that are less than 13 yards, I think that's going to bear very well for his fantasy production the rest of the season and for your fantasy teams if you are able to stash him on your fantasy teams, because I think he could have an impact. So go get Adonai Mitchell, probably from your waivers. You can probably get him for free. Keep him on your roster through the end of the season.
Demario Douglas is, in our opinion, definitely worth a stash as well. And that's going to be Drake May's continued development and passing volume. He's been kind of hit or miss, not just because he, got injured, left the game early, and that kind of affected the production of a lot of different players in that offense, but he's just figuring it out. He's a rookie, and he's shown really good flashes, and he's shown some not really great flashes. What he has shown a consistent uptick in is being able to help these wide receivers in this offense produce. And Douglas has been been very hit or miss. I mean, he's had games of 14 points, 11, 21, 10. He's had games of 3, 0, 4, 3, 3, and 9 today against Chicago. But I do like seeing the games where, again, he had 9 targets. He had 9 targets against Tennessee. He had 5 targets against Chicago. You're starting to see a slow, consistent uptick in target volume where his higher target opportunity weeks are going to be still 9 to 10 targets. His lower opportunity weeks have gone from 3 up to now, again, 5 in a game where he just didn't need to be utilized as much because they were owning Chicago, who Eberflus can't coach. He's not a head coach, at least. So with that in mind, and looking at the lineup over the next few weeks, I think this is a really, really good opportunity to stash Demario and see if he can do anything on the home stretch here for you and be a viable flex option. He's got the Rams in week 11. Good opportunity to be productive. Miami, going to be a little tougher, but Miami seems to hate winning, I guess. You've got the Colts, automatically going to produce. You've got the bye in week 14, then they've got Arizona, great. Buffalo, great. The Chargers, not so great. Buffalo again. So again, you've got like 4 or 5 really friendly matchups here within the next 7 weeks that I think really bode well for Demario Douglas. And you've just seen time and time again these guys like Khalil Shakir, who really has outproduced our expectations this season as an exclusive slot wide receiver, has really been able to carve a role into Buffalo's offense and be decently productive. I think Demario Douglas is very similar as well, but he also has some big play upside. I mean, they've taken shots downfield with Demario Douglas in the last couple of weeks and have been successful. So we'll see what he can do here with Drake May while he continues to develop. But I think May is only going to get better if he continues to target his best receivers. And I think Douglas has really transcended compared to the other receivers in that offense.
I think Douglas is the only guy in that offense from a receiver standpoint that has any upside rest of the season.
Consistent
and so when you
upside,
talk about Drake May, especially now playing a couple games and getting his feet wet and getting better, hopefully as the season goes on, I think Demario Douglas could be one of the primary beneficiaries of that. So I like it. Let's talk about Khil Herbert, who got dealt to the Cincinnati Bengals after you saw Zach Moss go on IR with a neck injury. I don't expect to see Zach Moss the rest of the year. And so Khil Herbert does become the running back 2 there. And you saw him get very involved in his first game with the Bengals. He had 2 snaps and he ran 1 route. And he technically had a fumble, but didn't even get credited to him. So he technically didn't even get on the stat sheet. And so a lot of people are going to look at that because you're looking at the snap counts for the Bengals this last week, and you're looking at 71 snaps for Chase Brown, 47 routes run for Chase Brown, and 13 carries and 10 targets for Chase Brown. And the next closest running back was Khil Herbert. He took 71 out of 74 total snaps that running backs were on the field, did Chase Brown. So a lot of people, I think, are going to look at this and really, really elevate Chase Brown's stock. And I think this is definitely a Chase Brown stock up moment, and definitely we should be reacting like that. I do think that you are going to see some of that production and some of the workload taper off to Khil Herbert over the next couple of weeks. I don't think they traded for him for no reason. They would be stupid to have traded for Khil Herbert just for them not to actually use him to give Chase Brown a breather. Obviously, the Bengals, as an organization and as a team, I think their goal is to have a second back that rotates in with Chase Brown. This is why you saw Zach Moss and Chase Brown both come in heavy competition this season for the running back 1 spot there, and both of them got work as the season was going on. Now, Chase Brown has consistently been the more fantasy productive back, but it doesn't mean that Khil Herbert can't be fantasy productive. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Khil Herbert did get some red zone touches down the stretch here in the season. Do keep in mind that if something were to happen to Chase Brown, Khil Herbert would be the running back 1 because he is going to be elevated, in my opinion, over Travion Williams in that backfield. He would be the guy that would get the majority of the carries. And you have seen Khil Herbert at times in the past be a fantasy productive back. So if he does get his opportunity in the Cincinnati Bengals offense, I do think he could be somebody that is either 1 injury away or even without the injury, I think he could get a small workload. I expect Chase Brown to remain the receiving back. I wonder, it is going to be mainly red zone carries. I think if you want to look at Zach Moss and his carries were dwindling. He had 12, 15 weeks 2 through 4, and then 9, 6, 6, and 5. It was just consistently going down. While his snap share hovered around 50%, he was essentially just splitting snaps. He was still getting about 3 to 4 targets a game was Zach Moss, and so this is going to be kind of similar with Khil Herbert here. Do keep in mind Zach Moss was scoring 7, 8 points in that role, and so it's not like that's totally insignificant. This is going to be for deeper leagues, I think, but Khil Herbert is somebody I think that you should think about stashing in your fantasy football leagues just because he is on a good offense and he is 1 injury away from being the starting back there.
Yeah, I think it's also worth noting that since Zach Moss really started getting banged up in that offense, Chase Brown's usage obviously going way up and his efficiency going way down. He was like 7.5, 8, 5.5, 5 yards per carry in the first quarter of the season, third of the season. Since then, last 4 games, 2.9, 2.6, 4.4, and 3.2 yards per carry. So I think if they want to be more efficient on the ground, they're probably going to have to swap around at the running back position.
I think you're exactly right.
We've got another guy here in Rashod Bateman, who I think has really been overlooked, and a lot of this has been due to the Deontay Johnson news of the last couple of weeks. And Deontay Johnson had a whopping 8% snap share on a really, really crucial game, both for the Ravens and for the Bugles on Thursday Night Football this past week. And they just straight up didn't utilize him. You know who they did utilize? Rashod freaking Bateman. When you're looking at the snap counts this week on passing down opportunities, you had Zay Flowers at number 1, 53 snaps, 33 routes run. You had Rashod Bateman right behind him, 49 snaps. The next closest guy was Aguilar with 31. Tylan Wallace, his production very fluky. He only had 12 snaps. Deontay Johnson had 5. It is Flowers and then Bateman and then Mark Andrews. It's actually Mark Andrews is there. He's on the field the entire game, but again, they're not utilizing him in the passing game all the time. Zay Flowers and then Rashod Bateman. Rashod Bateman this year, again, he's been very hit or miss, but I'll tell you what, if, and this is a big if, but also I think a likely if, Deontay Johnson's workload starts to increase in that offense while he gets implemented into that new system. I think that's going to continue to open the field up, number 1 for Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews, and then Rashod Bateman as well, who's really been that field stretcher there. He's not going to get a ridiculous amount of target volume, but his big playability is legit, and it's legit enough that he's had 11 points, 15 points, 11 points, 22 points, and 17 points over, like 5 games this season. So half of the games he's a viable flex option. And I think with all the injuries and all the bye weeks you're going through right now in your fantasy league, Rashod Bateman's a guy that you want to stash not only for now if you have to flex him, but for the foreseeable future. I mean, on the home stretch here, he's got Philly, then they got the bye, then they got the Giants, then they got Pittsburgh, which is tough, but then they have Houston in week 17 as well, which is a very wide receiver friendly situation. So with Rashod Bateman, they're going to have some tough 2 matchups against Pittsburgh in 2 weeks over the next last half of the season. But I think Bateman is really going to continue to benefit with this offense just getting better and better, it seems, with Mark Andrews really coming into his own, playing a different type of Mark Andrews football that we were not accustomed to, and he's really started to be consistently productive, which is super promising. And again, that has to be respected by defenses that are facing the Baltimore Ravens offense. And I think that's going to continue to help out Rashod Bateman and his potential production. So keep an eye on him. He's definitely a guy that you can get in waivers this week even for a decent price.
It's kind of mind-boggling that he hasn't been picked up in more leagues.
Yeah,
he's 32% rostership
32%,
in sleeper.
yeah.
I mean, that's kind of crazy. So I mean, this is a guy that's going to be a wide receiver 3 so far this year.
He's literally a Gabe Davis for the Ravens.
Yeah, he is, and they got a lot of passing volume. And Lamar is also throwing the ball the best he has in his entire career, even better than his first MVP season.
He's going to win MVP,
and he's a heavy favorite. So let's pick one of the biggest storylines, in my opinion, from this last week was that Javonte Williams pretty much got benched, and the guy he got benched for primarily was Audric Estime. You saw Audric Estime come on the field. For the first 2 drives, really, they kind of rotated out Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin, and then after that, they brought in Estime, and Estime pretty much was the early down back for the rest of the game. When you're looking at the running back usage charts for this last game, where they did lose, sadly, and in heartbreaking fashion to the Kansas City Chiefs, 26 snaps compared to, it is part of the script, 26 snaps compared to Javonte Williams, 16 compared to Jaleel McLaughlin, 7, and then there were 9 snaps where they didn't have anybody, but he really dominated the early down carries, right? And so you saw after that 3rd drive, he was the early down back there. Short yardage carries, he got all of those carries as well. We're talking about 3rd downs. This is where they were still using Javonte Williams. 3rd downs, 2-minute drills, passing downs. They were still utilizing Javonte. I think but with that being said, Javonte Williams, even this week, he ran 10 routes to Audric Estime's 8. So you're not really seeing a huge discrepancy there. He only had 2 targets to Javonte Williams this week. He only had 1 carry compared to Audric Estime's 14 carries. So I think for all intents and purposes, I think that Audric Estime might end up being the running back 1 here in Denver. Denver offense, keep in mind that this is a team that is 1 play away from only having 3 losses on the year, right? They were about to be, 6-3? Mm-hmm. And their offense does look somewhat competent.
Because Bo Nix actually looks pretty solid.
He does look solid. And not to mention, Bo Nix, again, in week 6, 7, and 9, you've seen him have more than 35 rushing yards.
Mm-hmm.
this is something I think. I mean, a lot of his rushing upside is coming basically on scrambling, right? But with that being said, it does mean that offense is a little bit more dynamic than we thought it was going to be. As a passer, you've seen Bo Nix take some steps forward as well, right? He's had over 200 yards each of his last 3 games, which for a rookie in that offense, I'm actually kind of surprised, not going to lie. So with Estime, 7% rostership in sleeper league. So this is going to be a waiver pickup, essentially. I think you should stash him the rest of the season. I think he's going to be hotly contested. Of course, in the flock league, I'm looking at that right now. He's not on waivers because we didn't do waivers right in this league. These rosters are too deep, and waivers weren't competitive enough this year. Just getting that out there. But he's going to be available in your league because you're not psychos like we are. And I would pay a lot for Estime. He is one of the only potential running back ones that we've seen on waivers like in the past 6-7 weeks. We haven't seen them. They've not been there. I'd spend 15 to 25% on Estime pretty easily, actually. And that's just me. You can tell me what you think in the comments, but he's a waiver pickup. He is somebody that I want rest of the season, and I don't know if this is going to continue, but I'm definitely willing to take my shot. They obviously really liked him when they drafted him, and he was on IR, and he's come back, and he's slowly been eased in. Now he's getting a lot of carries, and he's the primary early down back there. So I'll take my shot on Estime. I'll go pick him off of waivers, and I'll spend a lot too. So.
Yeah, the last guy we're going to have here is Samaje Perine, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's so disgusting. You're so dumb. You're such an idiot. Again, this is a stash video, number one. Number two, I think there are a lot of different variables here that need to be considered, and that I think potentially benefit Samaje Perine, especially towards the end of the season where it's worth rostering him to see what he can do. Number one, you have seen it in the past, multiple running backs be productive for the Kansas City Chiefs, especially at the home stretch when they start leaning on those running backs in the passing game. See Jerick McKinnon, for example, where he just went bananas in the last third of the season. Samaje Perine, I'm still of the opinion Andy Reid traded for Samaje Perine and picked him up just because he was hopeful that they could get another Jerick McKinnon type of player, and that's exactly what his skill set is. So when you're looking at the situation with the Chiefs, again, they just got a very, very lucky win where they had a nice special teams block there and only scored 16 points. They are struggling offensively, and they cannot wait for Isaiah Pacheco to come back. I know it's been so fun seeing Kareem Hunt get a nice second win in his career with the Chiefs for a 6-game stretch here, but Pacheco is nearing a return with the next couple of weeks. Number one, when Pacheco comes back, I think Kareem Hunt is dead. I think he's 100% dead. I think he's going to get hardly any usage at all because the dude has been so inefficient on the ground. He's getting so much volume because the Chiefs win by running the ball, but it would be nice if he was efficient and if actually consistently effective. Last 5 games, 3.7, 3.5, 2.8, 3.9, and 2.5 yards per carry. That is so bad. So bad. I think Andy Reid can't wait for Pacheco to come back. I think he can't wait to bench Kareem Hunt and let him be the third, maybe even fourth option at the running back position. Kareem Hunt's expendable at this point, and that's why they're giving him so much volume and opportunity. I also would not count on Kareem Hunt getting this much receiving down usage as well. He had 10 targets against Denver, again, in a matchup that was very low scoring, not super, I would say, usual for the Chiefs, even for their standards right now. It's very not typical for what they've been doing even this season. And for Kareem Hunt, not typical for him. 3 targets, 1, 2, 1, and 1 before his 10-target game against Denver. Which one do you think's the outlier? Probably not the other 5. So I'm just throwing it out there. I think that's a bit of an aggressive prediction for me, but that's what I'm going to go with here. Samaje Perine is going to be the receiving back there, and Pacheco, when he comes back, let's just look at what he did before the injury. 3 targets and 5 targets, which is respectable against Baltimore and Cincinnati to start the season before he broke his leg, but I do believe that Pacheco is, and he's shown in the past, that he's not an ultra consistent receiving option. He can be effective in the passing game, but again, the way that Andy Reid operates and has shown in the past at the running back position is he likes a running back that he can give 15 carries to, like Pacheco, who's very effective in the running game, and then have a passing down running back. Perine, I guarantee you Perine's going to be that guy. It's not Carson Steele. He hasn't demonstrated it, and when he got the opportunity, he fumbled the ball. And with Kareem Hunt, he's just not been consistent enough to get that opportunity. And again, even when he had 10 targets, 7 receptions today, only 6.5 yards per reception. That's not what we're looking for an effective receiving back. Perine can average 10-plus yards per reception easily when he gets that usage and opportunity. He's going to get it when Pacheco comes back.
So there you go. Some guys, again, these are all going to be guys. They're not sexy names. A lot of of them are waiver pickups this week. A lot of them you're going to be like, yeah, this is stupid. A lot of them will only apply to deeper leagues. But we did want to give you some options to stash for the rest of the season. So if you like the videos, you want to support us, you can do that in a very easy way. Just drop a like on the video and then hit subscribe if you're not subscribed. Those two things help us out a ton. So we really appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you later.